literally the future of this once great and yet visibly declining civilization is going to be determined in rooms like this. Not to put any pressure on you at all, okay? But this is where the battle is at. In my line of work, what we have done is made our entire focus about elections. It's good for business. It's good for clicks. People get hopped up on the personalities, get fired up. The other side, what I like to call the spirit of the age, if you get both the theological and the philosophical reference, the other side is focused on generations. We are focused on the next election. And take it from somebody that lives in Iowa, first in the nation caucus state. The 2024 campaign began for me about 5 minutes after the 2022 campaign ended. Okay? But one side focused on winning the next generation. One side performed Antonio Gramsci's long march through the institutions. Our side focused on the next election and polls and focus groups. I ask you, who's winning? I'll give you a hint. It's not us. It's not us. Jesus said the children of men are smarter than the children of light. They have done an incredible job of taking over virtually every institution in this country that was founded on our worldview. Virtually all of them. And the one that they started with was education. Why do you think they started there? When I kid on my show or on my social media feeds that government education is Satan's youth ministry, I'm only half kidding. Now when I look at the fleet of pedo groomers that populate the ranks of our government schools and they love to show themselves off on libs of TikTok and other social media channels, I start thinking maybe I'm not kidding at all. Maybe it's not a euphemism at all. Maybe it's not parody at all. It's not satire at all. It's the forecast. It's where we are. See, they turned the schools into their church. This is how they pass on their legacy. This is how they inculcate. This is their youth ministry. Rest assured, in every classroom in America, yours, the ones in the government schools in this community, every single one, somebody's catechesis is going to be taught. In every single one. The idea that there will be void of morality and spirituality, this is another thing we like to say on the right. And we say these things because we're so afraid of getting banned. We're so afraid of being labeled terrible things by all the people who already label us. So we like the low-lying fruit talking point, as opposed to going for the premise of the argument that might actually win. So we say things like, well, just teach kids how to read and write and spell. Just do that. As if we're not body, soul, mind, and spirit. As if we're just automatons. That we're not eternal beings. C.S. Lewis once said, you've never met someone who was not immortal. We're not just random acts or random achievements or random impulses. We're human beings made in the likeness and image of God. And therefore, because of that, it is impossible to just teach reading, writing, and arithmetic. That's impossible. Someone's catechesis will be taught. Everyone's getting catechized in every classroom in America because we are moral and spiritual beings first. The only debate here is, what is the catechesis? When you get into a classical education and what you guys are doing here, to me, I think there are 3 pillars of your mission. And not coincidentally, you will note that these are 3 things sorely lacking in American culture today. That is not a coincidence. The enemy is very good at what he does. He has been at it for thousands of years. Number one, meritocracy. We have really two masculine-driven meritocracies left in America, but they are fading fast. There's the artist formerly known as the National Football League, now the Flag Football League. Don't hurt anybody, please. And please don't celebrate as you cover up, it might cover up the social justice messages in the end zone. And the military. The military used to be a masculine-driven meritocracy. Now it's woke and flies rainbow flags all over the world. This, again, is not a coincidence. Meritocracies create competition. Meritocracies teach success and failure. Maybe some of you have seen that famous photo of what public school playgrounds used to look like a century ago. Have you guys seen this photo? And the monkey bars are like 30 feet in the air, and there's no net, and no one is wearing a helmet. I remember when our oldest daughter, Anastasia, when I taught her how to ride a bike years ago. And now he's a buddy of mine. I didn't know him at the time. But a conservative comedian named Brad Stein had just put out his very first tourist video called Put a Helmet On, mocking the helmet-wearing culture. And I remember saying to my wife at the time, no way in hell are we putting a helmet on one of our kids. Life is risk. I had a nice job at 1040 WHO in Des Moines. One of the #1 mid-market radio stations in America, has won all kinds of awards. I could have been there my entire career, made a nice, quiet life for myself in Des Moines, and been far more liked. But then one day, a group of Christian businessmen came to me and said, hey, we've seen the impact that you have had in our state, and we're wondering if we put the capital behind you to move beyond Iowa, could maybe you have a similar impact nationally? They were like, I was like, well, how do we do this? They're like, we were hoping you knew. We're not radio people. So I had no connections, no idea how to do this, and a 6-month non-compete. But I had some resources and we had a vision. And the #1 reason, my wife and I, we prayed through this decision for many, many weeks. And finally, the #1 reason we took this risk, and I walked out of a very safe cocoon, and there's not a lot of safe cocoons in the radio business these days. And the #1 reason why is my wife looked at me and said, I don't want to be here next year when you're 50 years old wondering what would have happened if you would have taken that risk. That was 12 years ago. Later this year, I will be 50 years old. And that was the best risk that I ever took. It's how I got to know people like you and get to speak to audiences like this. Without meritocracy, safetyism becomes an ideology. When did that become a thing? Instead of entrepreneurialism, the idea of taking a risk, reaping the rewards. I told both of my precious daughters, when it is time for you to find a man to marry, my best advice, 2 requirements. #1, they got to love Jesus. And #2, they had to have taken a punch at least once in life, figuratively or literally. Because a man that has not taken a punch, has not failed, will be one of 2 kinds of men. The boy who can shave, he will take no risks because he's not sure if it fails, can I get back up? I don't know, I've never had to. And so you'll be leading him. You don't want that. Or he'll be incredibly arrogant and think that he couldn't possibly lose, and he'll take nothing but risks and be reckless. How many of our young men in particular know what it's like to lose, know what it's like to win? I read a study this morning that showed the lowest amount of young men in the history of America are interested in dating women. My goodness, when we were growing up, our parents stormed the basement stairs. Hand check, right? Someone take a risk, for goodness sakes. I'd like to have a grandkid before I'm 75. Thanks. But that's where we are. We've lost meritocracy. It's okay to lose. It's not okay, though, to be a loser. How do I know the difference? I take a punch and I get back up and I fight back and I get better. When I was in the 7th grade, I lost the last spot on the Jackson Park Junior High basketball team to the fat kid. Then I became the fat kid, but that's not important now. And I spent the next year, man, recording every game on local cable I could find. We had a cable channel in Michigan called Pass. And I'd watch every Scott Skiles Michigan State game and every Glenn Rice Michigan game. And I would go out in the snow in my driveway trying to emulate their jump shots over and over and over again. I'm 50 years old. I haven't picked up a basketball in several years, but give me a warm-up. I can still shoot like I could when I was a kid. I can't move like that. But that hard work, that muscle memory is still there. Why did I do that? Because I failed. And it sucked. And I didn't want to do it again. Meritocracy needs to return to this culture in place of safetyism. The second pillar of what you're trying to do here is a word that's actually on the logo behind me, veritas, truth. Jesus says to Pontius Pilate, "For this reason I came into the world, to testify to the truth." The West, not just America, the entire West is in an epistemological crisis. That's just a fancy stained glass window word for the study of knowledge. How do we know what we know is actually true? If you were to ask most of Gen Z and most of millennials how they know what is true, first of all, don't, okay? Don't. Because you're probably depressed enough, all right? But if you get an answer, it'll be based on nothing solid. Basically, truth in America is like the Federal Reserve. This is the difference between a currency that is fiat, that you print, versus one that is based on a finite value of something that is of value, like gold, for example. We just make up truth, just like we print money. It's not a shock that at the same time we've printed about 80% of every dollar that's ever been printed in American history in just the last few years. It's not a shock that at the same time we've done that, we have determined, according to Facebook, there are 57 genders. It's not a shock. Most of my career, I've heard people tell me, "Oh, I'm a fiscal conservative and a social liberal." No, you're a moron. That's what you are. Let's just be honest about that. You're an idiot. That's what you are. Because there's no such thing. You can't be one or the other. The more immoral that people become, the bigger the government gets. The more they pass on the cost of their immoral decisions to others rather than be held accountable for them. And if you do not want them to be held accountable for those decisions, congratulations. You're a racist, misogynistic, xenophobic, homophobic bigot. That's the society in which we live today. It's a society void of truth. I even see conservative commentators on Fox. That's my truth. You have no truth. You're a sinner. There's no truth in you. There is the truth and a lie. Paul writes in Romans 1, they exchange the truth for a lie. The inference is clear there. There is truth is a singular entity to be discovered, to be found, not to be conjured, not to be made. But there are many lies. Many lies. Lies gets the plural article. We live in a culture of lies. But if believing this lie brings me the outcome that I want, if believing this lie gives me the emotional affirmation I seek, well, then it must be true. What is objectively true? When I was a kid, my favorite U2 song was "I Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For." It is very cool in America today to not find what you're looking for, to seek it out, seek truth. You know what's not kosher, what's not cool? Finding it. Not cool. Searching aimlessly, circling the drain, being the gerbil in the box, never catching the cheese, that's totes cool. That's what all the cool kids do today. What's not cool is finding truth, living by it. Oh, what's really not cool is sharing it, teaching it. Earlier this week, I was on Tim Pool's show, one of the largest shows on YouTube. And I had a chance to answer challenges to the Christian faith from one of the panelists on the show, Ian. And we had a great time. We bro-hugged it out afterwards. So I know you guys aren't used to this in America today. Sometimes men full of testosterone, now hold on, okay? Disagree. Happens sometimes. Okay, and sometimes in that disagreement, it might even get heated. And then afterwards, I got heard, you got heard. It's good. We don't do that anymore. Let's have no confrontation at all, a confrontationless society. And ultimately, what our disagreement was about is what is true. And after it was over, later in the program, I looked at Ian and I said, you and I just had the most dangerous conversation in America. They don't want us to have these conversations. The truth is our friend. The truth is its own reward. Do not fear the truth. Seek it. Share it. This line's often been attributed to Augustine, if you're Catholic, or Spurgeon, if you're an evangelical. I would no more defend the Bible than I would defend a caged lion. Simply let the lion out of its cage, and it will defend itself just fine. Let the lion out of its cage. You're all here tonight because I think you have a desire to do that and to see that impact the next generation. But understand, that's the most dangerous thing you could do. And whenever you seek to rebuild the walls of your civilization, whenever you are in Nehemiah mode where you have the Word of God in one hand and a sword or a hammer in the other, you're rebuilding the walls of your civilization, rest assured, Sanballat and Tobiah always show up every single time. The haters always arrive. And they will want you to come down from the wall. They will want you to stop updating your facility, adding to it, both in terms of bricks and mortar and also human resources and students. Come in, let's have an argument. Let's discuss things. They don't want to have an argument. They want to have a distraction. You make sure to tell those fools and liars, like Nehemiah did, I am doing a very important work and I cannot come down from this wall. Don't come down from the wall. The final pillar of what you're doing here with classical education is critical thinking. Earlier in my career, I did over 50 appearances on MSNBC and CNN because I hate myself. And thankfully, my wife's a therapist now. We're working our way through that. But no, in all seriousness, I do hate myself. But in all seriousness, it was because I was getting out nationally for the first time. And I needed to get my name out there to anybody, who would take it. And that's as desperate as it gets. But I did learn a lot. I learned a lot getting a chance that many times live on national television, engaging the other side of the argument. I learned, for example, that a fair debate is 3 demonically possessed panelists, a demonically sympathetic host, and then me. That was equal time. And then I learned how to say things in like 3 minutes because they'd all get their points in, check every box of their talking points, and then say, all right, Steve, what do you have to say for yourself, basically? Which is why if you listen to my podcast now, I just tend to ramble on. I'm making up for all the lost time of all those cable news appearances. I got all kinds of things to say. But one of the things I learned listening to the arguments they made for their position is that they didn't actually have any arguments. Guys, I'll just tell you this. There was never one time, once, When the show was over, I thought to myself, I'm looking at things totally differently after that exchange. I never thought about that before. There was no logic. There was no reason. Really, it's like that scene in As Good as It Gets when Jack Nicholson describes why he's so good at writing about women. Well, first I take a man, and then I make him devoid of any reason, logic, right? Okay, that's what it was like. It's pure, raw, unbridled emotion. That's all that it is. We are so afraid to confront this in the public sphere because they might call us a name. That just would be terrible. Aunt Petunia, whom we both know you can't stand, might light up the comments in your Facebook page. So by all means, yes, go ahead and just let her destroy Western civilization. We wouldn't want that to happen. There's no there. Take it from someone who has done this on national TV and all over the country. I used to think there must be something else I don't know. There must be. No. If they had really good arguments, they wouldn't just resort to calling you names. They don't have any good arguments. They have been indoctrinated. Frankly, I could come up with better arguments for their positions. I've actually thought them through. They've just felt their way through. It's emotional affirmation. And how dare you deny them of that? If you teach those young people that are in that room right over there, and the other several hundred that are not here tonight, if you teach them how to critically think, you will turn them in to freaking superheroes. You will unleash weapons of mass philosophical destruction upon an unsuspecting populace that is very deserving of that accountability. Encourage that critical thinking. Encourage the debate. Encourage the discord. We were having a conversation at dinner last night with some members of your board about spontaneous conversations happening over lunch between Catholics and Protestants. Now listen, don't have them start killing each other like they did in Europe, for 100 years in the Middle Ages. Don't do that. But let them have the argument. Let them learn how to do this peaceably, but aggressively and critically, to hear arguments that they then filter against their own belief system and push back on. This was a normal part of being an American for hundreds of years. It is a rare art now. Bring sexy back, all right? Bring back critical thinking. Encourage that. If we had just a small army of critical thinking in the next generation, I don't need masses of armies in a culture war when I have the Navy SEALs. Give me the special forces. Give me the critical thinkers. You are training that special forces unit in institutions like this. By all means, do not give up that mission, because that last act, the ability to critically think, to hoist from their own petard, to turn the phrase, as the great D.L. Moody once said, I'm winsome, so I win some. That is where persuasion takes place. That's where you silence the terrible arguments and you give people courage. Cowardice has been too contagious in this culture in the last few decades. It is time, via critical thinking, to make courage contagious again as well. Amen? I will close with this. I get amazing encouragement doing events like this around the country. Almost to the point that I think maybe I should pay you guys. I mean, I won't because I'm a capitalist, but doing what I do for a living, I see the worst of the worst and talk about it every single day. And when I get out of that studio and get a chance to be in rooms like this with folks like you, salt of the earth kind of people, who are doing something, this is incredible. I mean, take it from someone who's done a lot of mobilization and organization in my career. This is one of what you guys have done here in just a couple of years. It's one of the most impressive things I have ever seen. Getting a crowd like this here on a weekend night. I mean, it helps that Ohio State basketball sucks, but so you guys aren't distracted by that. I'm sorry, is this on? I'm sorry. But the level of commitment to have hundreds of kids, you have 70 kindergartners starting next year. That is incredible. We have given these two major political parties who do not deserve us way too much of our time for decades. I'm not saying vacate the political process, that's part of our citizenship, but maybe let's reverse the paradigm a little bit. Instead of giving local engagement and activism this much time, and giving these two major political parties this much time, maybe let's flip that script a little bit. Because what you're doing here, you're terraforming here. This is culture building, you're kingdom building here. You're creating infrastructure. But that's also going to make you a threat. Make sure you are prepared for that. Pray together often for peace, unity, and integrity amongst each other as families, and especially amongst the leadership. Because I can promise you, the enemy does not want you to do what you are doing right now. And he will come. So be prepared. And remember the famous words of Benjamin Franklin. We either hang together or we hang separately. God bless. Thank you guys very much for letting me come here tonight. Thank you.